every single day before the world even has a chance to name us, label us, or tell us who we are. We need to be the ones to speak first. The words we tell ourselves in the quiet of the morning when our feet hit the floor and our hearts are still catching up with the day, those words matter. That's not just a poetic sentiment, it's truth. Because your mind is always listening to your mouth. And if all it hears is criticism, doubt, fear, and negativity, it starts to shape itself in the image of those words. But if it hears hope, strength, love, purpose, then it begins to rise into that instead. See, there's power in what we say to ourselves. We don't need to wait for someone to affirm us or remind us of our worth. We can and should do that ourselves, not out of pride, not out of ego, but out of understanding that the world is loud, but our inner world is louder. And if we aren't intentional with what we feed it, we'll default to whatever noise is most convincing that day. That's why I say, talk to yourself every day, not out loud like you've lost your mind, but on purpose like you've found it. You've got to be deliberate about what thoughts get to plant themselves in the soil of your soul, because whatever gets planted, if unchecked, will grow. So you have to ask, are my thoughts growing weeds or fruit? You might not be able to control what people say about you. You might not be able to control what life throws your way, but you can control what you say to yourself. You can decide that your voice has more authority than your fears. You can decide that even if nobody else believes in you, do. And when you do that daily, consistently, you start to live like it. That's the kind of power self-talk has. It doesn't change reality instantly, but it changes how we show up in it. And that's enough to start turning things around. Now, I'm not talking about fluffy words just to feel good. I'm talking about truth, the kind that has weight, the kind that speaks to who you are, even when you don't feel like it, the kind that reminds you you are valuable, you have purpose. You don't have to have it all together to be worth something. You are not behind. You are not too much. You are not too broken. And even if yesterday was messy, today is still a gift. That's the stuff you need to remind yourself every single day. Because let's be real, some mornings you'll wake up, forget what you've survived, forget who you are, forget why you started. That's when the words you've been saying to yourself have to kick in and do their job. They have to rise up and remind you you've made it through worse. You're not here by accident. You've got breath in your lungs, and that means there's still purpose on your life. So when I say talk to yourself, I mean build something with your words, hope, build courage, build discipline, build the kind of foundation that doesn't shake just because the world does. Your words can do that, but only if you use them right. Speak life every day, because if you don't, something else will speak death, and you don't have time for that. You've got too much purpose to stay silent. There's something that happens when you speak truth over yourself, especially when life feels like it's crumbling. It's not magic. It's not pretending. It's resistance. It's choosing not to sink, even when everything around you is saying you should. That's what daily affirmations really are. They're not just pretty quotes you write on sticky notes. They're weapons. They are the armor you put on before you walk out into a world that's constantly trying to strip you bare. When you tell yourself something like, I am still growing, or I am more than what happened to me, you're not just making declarations, you're planting seeds of resilience, seeds of dignity. And when watered daily, they bloom into strength. You might not see it immediately. That's the part that makes it hard, because growth rarely looks like growth in real time. But what you repeat, you begin to believe, and what you believe, you begin to live. Every day you wake up with the choice to be either your biggest critic or your strongest ally. And too often we fall into this rhythm of rehearsing everything that went wrong yesterday. We replay our mistakes, our insecurities, the conversations that didn't go how we hoped. But what would happen if instead we started rehearsing our resilience, replaying what we've overcome, what we've learned, and how far we've come? That kind of focus changes how you show up to the day. You don't carry the same weight when you're constantly reminding yourself that you're more powerful than your past. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about denying the hard stuff. This isn't about slapping a positive quote over a deep wound and calling it healing. It's about acknowledging the pain while also recognizing the power that still lives inside of you. It's saying, yes, I've been through it, but I'm still here. And because I'm still here, I'm still capable. That's the kind of talk that lifts your chin on the hard days. That's what keeps your heart soft and your soul steady. It's also what gives you authority in your own life. When you speak these affirmations over yourself every day, you're taking with me, yerking your power back from the voices that told you couldn't, that you weren't enough, that you'd never be anything more than your worst moment. You're rewriting the story. You're reclaiming your name. That's what daily affirmation does. It gives you back what the world tried to take. And listen, sometimes it'll feel weird saying things out loud that you don't fully believe yet, telling yourself, I'm loved or I'm enough when everything in you is screaming the opposite. But that's the work. That's how you train your mind. You don't wait. You don't until you believe it to speak it. You speak it or you believe it. You do it until your body, your brain, your spirit catch up with the truth you've been telling. You're not lying to yourself when you affirm your worth. You're reminding yourself of what's always been true, even when you forgot. And sometimes that reminder is the only thing standing between giving up and going on. So don't just let the day tell you who you are. Don't just let your emotions write the script. Be the one to declare it. Be the one to speak life, strength, speak stability until words rise up inside you and start carrying you through. Because resilience isn't built in the moments when everything's easy. It's built in the moments when everything's heavy, but you still choose to speak truth anyway. One of the most underrated ways to grow is by paying attention to what you're telling yourself and then asking, am I living like that's true? Because it's one thing to speak words of encouragement, but it's another thing entirely to let those words shape how you show up. That's where alignment comes in. Saying one thing and living another will always leave you frustrated, tired, and out of sync. But when what you say lines up with how you move, there's a kind of clarity that starts to form. You don't have to second guess every decision because your values are already guiding you. We all know how easy it is to make declarations in the morning and then forget all about them by lunchtime. You wake up saying, today I'm walking in peace. And then by 11 a.m., somebody cuts you off in traffic, your patience is gone, and you're ready to throw hands. That's real. But the problem isn't that you got angry. The problem is when you stop fighting for alignment, when you decide that your reactions matter more than your intentions. See, alignment is a choice you have to keep making even when your emotions are loud, especially when your emotions are loud. That's why what you say to yourself can't just be pretty words. It has to be a mirror, something you keep coming back to, something that shows you who you want to be when life is trying to pull you in every other direction. If I tell myself I'm rooted in love, then that should change how I speak to people, even the ones who get on my nerves. If I tell myself I'm walking in purpose, then that should impact how I spend my time. If the words I speak to myself don't challenge the way I live, then I'm just performing for my own ego. Let's be honest. Discipline isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like saying no to things that seem harmless but would pull you off track. It looks like honoring your own boundaries when nobody else is around to hold you accountable. And that's hard, especially when nobody claps for you. When there's no applause, no recognition, just quiet obedience, truth you've chosen to believe. But that's where character is built. That's where real transformation happens. Not in the spotlight, but in the decisions nobody sees. There are days when you're going to want to slip back into old patterns, when it feels easier to just survive instead of live intentionally. And that's okay. Those moments are part of the process. But the goal is to keep reminding yourself, yeah, I'm not who I used to be. And because I'm not who I used to be, I don't move like I used to move. I don't react like I used to react. I don't speak the same lies over myself that I used to speak. That's alignment. That's growth. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware, about checking in with yourself and saying, does my life reflect what I say I believe? Because if you say you're free, but you're still chasing approval from everybody around you, there's a disconnect. If you say you're healed, but you're still living out of your wounds, something's not lining up. And that's not to condemn, it's to call you deeper, to invite you into a life that's whole, not just externally, but internally too. You don't need to be two different people, one in your mind and another in your actions. Or with me, when your inner life matches your outer life, there's peace. There's confidence. You can walk into a room and not be swayed by every opinion or every vibe because you know who you are and you live like it. That kind of integrity is rare, but it's possible. So keep speaking truth. Yes. But more than that, let that truth lead your steps. The thing about transformation is that it doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or big dramatic music. Most of the time, it comes slow, quiet, even like water dripping on stone, carving something deep and lasting over time. That's what repetition does. It doesn't always feel powerful in the moment, but over time, it builds something strong inside of you. It builds belief. It builds identity. It builds truth into the parts of you that used to only know lies. See, we want change to be instant. We want to say something good one time and suddenly feel different. But the heart doesn't work like that. The mind doesn't like that. You didn't get here overnight and you won't leave here overnight either. But what you do every day, what you tell yourself again and again, that's what shapes who you become. And that's why the practice matters with me. That's why saying these things to yourself every day matters, because the enemy of your soul doesn't need you to stop believing in God to keep you stuck. All he needs is for you to keep agreeing with lies. Lies like, I'll never change. I'm too far gone. I don't have what it takes. And if you rehearse those enough, they'll feel like truth. But just because it feels real doesn't mean it is. Feelings are loud, but repetition is louder when it's grounded in truth. You want to know what makes a person strong. It's not just the ability to endure hard things. It's the ability to remind themselves of who they are while they're enduring, to keep coming back to the truth, not just on the good days, but on the days when everything feels like it's falling apart, when you wake up and you don't feel worthy, but you say it anyway. Or when your mind is spinning, but you speak peace anyway. That's power. That's spiritual discipline. And it is not glamorous, but it's necessary. This is why I say you don't have to feel it for it to work. You don't have to have goosebumps every time you affirm something good over your life. Sometimes it's dry. Sometimes it's routine. Sometimes you're saying it through tears, but that's still planting. That's still choosing to sow something beautiful, even in the middle of your storm. And when you stay consistent, even when it feels pointless, that's when the shift starts to happen. Not all at once, but slowly. You catch yourself being kinder to yourself. You respond differently. You hold your head a little higher. And it's not because everything around you changed. It's because you did. Repetition is about building something real, something that lasts. It's not about faking positivity. It's about grounding yourself in something that can hold you when life tries to shake you. You're not just saying these things to sound good. You're saying them so that when the winds of anxiety or shame are come, they find no room to settle because your spirit is already filled with truth, with intention, with identity. And let me say this, there will be days when you forget, days when the noise gets loud and the lies get bold. That doesn't mean you failed. That means you're human. Just don't stay in that place. Go back to the truth. Go back to the words that remind you of who you are. Say them again and again and again, not because you're trying to convince yourself, but because repetition reclaims what life tried to bury. So keep saying it, even when it's hard, even when you don't feel it, because every time you speak truth over your life, you're becoming the person you were always meant to be.